we held your my bad. So this is a little restaurant. I think they're about to close down right now. So front of the sign says cupcakes. This is also in Cabbagetown. Sweet Cheats, that's what it's called. Sorry, Sweet Cheats. There it is. Do you mind if you show me that cake again? Do you still have it?
It already got delivered.
Darn. Okay.
Sorry.
Because the when I recorded it, but this is kind of dark. So, but it's okay. No worries.
Yeah, it was. I was literally the guy that was standing here was my delivery driver.
Got you.
So yeah.
Okay, cool. No worries. No worries.
No, good.
I'll film some other stuff. You guys are about to close?
We already closed at 4.
Oh.
So I'm just staying open.
Gotcha.
Oh, that's here you boys. I'll see you outside. What?
Hey, so you got utensils or? Yeah. Supposed to be utensils. I'm gonna try to catch you today though, not some other time.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just keep these right down here.
You know what I mean?
Huh?
I'm gonna try to catch you and talk to you today.
I mean, if you can stick around.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick around.
We're rocking until 8. Cool.
I ain't got nothing to do. You know what I mean?
Thanks, Brian.
I'll be across the street. All right. Once again, I had to get some utensils for this delicious Filipino dish that I'm about to partake of. Oh, my mouth is salivating already. So we're here in Cabbagetown. If you can scope out the area. This is like the older parts of Atlanta that I have not really discovered much of since I've been here in Atlanta for 6.5 to 7 years. It's like I found no reason to come down this way because usually I'm up north, up in like Duluth, Doraville, Norcross, which are nice areas, but it's more suburban. But down here it's more of like the city neighborhoods, you know, Atlanta's city neighborhoods, and one of the neighborhoods is Cabbagetown. And actually this is Cabbagetown Park. So it's really nice, it's cozy, people are really chill, mad chill. I think it's like, to me, like in Brooklyn, it's like going to Williamsburg, you know, but just more on a not at such a high level, but it's more southern, obviously, because I'm in the south. But it's like Williamsburg. It has that chill vibe. People are chill, you know. All the people in Williamsburg are not from Williamsburg. I'm pretty sure it's the same here for Cabbagetown. But here we go. Check this out. That looks delicious. So you got your half chicken and you got your rice, and I think this is the sauce for the chicken, and then you have your side salad right there, and a nice little Sprite to cool me down. So I'm gonna enjoy this. Can you see all this goodness? And it's like scorching hot right now. It's I think it could be around 95, 96. The temperature, the high is supposed to be 95 or 96 today. Yeah, 96. And it is muggy and warm. But nonetheless, I got some food, so it'll keep my my mind off of the heat. Yes, sir. Let me pull some of this off. My mouth is watering because I'm hungry. Yep. Look at that. Nice.
My friends came over. You guys think y'all already?
Oh yeah. You know what? See, I like my chicken without any sauce because I focus more on the seasoning of the chicken. So if it's seasoned well, not much sauce is needed. But I'll make an exception for today, since this is Filipino food. So I'm gonna try their sauce with the chicken. This thing right here. Oh, smells like hot sauce. Probably is hot sauce. Yep, it's hot sauce. Don't know if it's Filipino hot sauce, but it is definitely hot sauce. Tastes divine. Some of this white rice with the this chicken skin. This is coconut rice, like literal coconut. You can taste coconut in the rice. Wow. It's an interesting collaboration. It's like this is a little sweet, and then the savory, it actually goes well together. I'm just gonna be black right now and just pull the chicken off and eat it with my hand. It's good, man. This is all around good. Back in New York, I wasn't really exposed to Filipino food because don't have many Filipino people living in New York. They are there, but it's like sprinkles, like a little sprinkle of Filipino and Vietnamese. But it's mainly like, you know, Chinese, Korean, and a little Japanese. This is really good Filipino style chicken. And earlier I felt like I was gonna pass out, like faint a little bit, and I was like, oh, okay, I haven't eaten anything that's hot. Bad combination. So now that I'm eating, I should be okay. Yeah, this hot sauce is not like hot. It's like has like a vinegary taste to it, plus the hotness. It's just right, actually. It's enjoyable. But like I said again, I prefer my chicken without any sauces or barbecue. I mean, if it's barbecue chicken, fine. But if it's like chicken that's, you know, if it's like rotisserie chicken or anything, just give it to me because I want to taste the seasoning that you put in it. Alright, so here's one of the co-owners of Estrellita. Am I saying that right? Estrellita. Cool. Nice. And this is
I'm so hot. It's been such a day.
it's been such a day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Why do I have a blank on your name?
Hope.
Hope.
Yes.
There you go. Cool.
Hope. Last name is Webb.
Hope Webb.
Yes.
Interesting. All right. So she's the owner of Estrellita,
I am.
and I just did a previous video, and it just came out like yesterday. Well, you guys wouldn't know on YouTube when yesterday or today is, but it came out previously, and she is taking a break right now because she's been behind the stove in that little furnace
Yes.
over there, 96-degree weather. And so yeah, tell us about yourself. Your background, where you're from, where you're born.
So I was born in Florida, but
Okay.
I think that I had bigger ambitions, so I ended up moving to New Jersey for like 20 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where the New York thing comes into.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Then I bounced around up there. I lived on 181st and Cabrini. I lived off of Pelham Parkway in the Bronx at one point.
Wow.
My sister was in Park Slope, so I've been all over that area.
Yeah.
So I lived there for 20 years, all of my adulthood, and then I met my partner in New Jersey, and his family started to migrate to Atlanta because one of his sisters married someone from the area.
Okay.
And so he came down, and then at one point he's like, do you want to open up a Filipino restaurant, because there wasn't one here. And I think it was Steve Jobs said that if there's ever a void, and you want to make money, fill it. So wherever there's a void, fill it. So it's kind of like, what do humans need? Well, humans need Filipino food in my eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he and I both decided to open up Estrellita. It's a very small restaurant in Grant Park, but it's great. It allows us to do tableside education, which is very, very important whenever it comes to a cuisine that no one knows of. But ironically enough, there's like some underground Filipinos here, because everyone that comes into our restaurant, I'm like, have you ever had Filipino food? Because that's the question. And they would say, oh, my neighbor was Filipino, or yeah, when I was growing up, my best friend was Filipino. And so it's always like a 6 degree of separation that someone has known a Filipino.
Right.
So it seems like Atlanta was ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. In New York, obviously, you really don't see a lot of Filipino, and if you do, they're in Queens.
Jersey City is a big one
yeah.
for Jersey. Yeah, Jersey City is huge.
Yeah, but in the boroughs, it's like mainly Queens.
It is mainly Queens. That's exactly right.
So I didn't get much exposure to Filipino. I know one or two, but they were really cool peoples. But it was mainly like Japanese, Chinese, Korean in New York City. Huge.
Yeah.
So every time I get exposed to Filipino people or Filipino cuisine, I always want to try it out.
Yeah.
Because I rarely try Filipino cuisine.
And what's so interesting about Filipino food is that it's so relatable, and people don't even realize it. You know what I mean? The Spanish colonized us for 333 years. Actually, just a few days ago was our Independence Day.
Wow.
And the Spanish colonized us for 333 years, and I always say, like, with them, they brought their tomatoes, potatoes, and garlic. All of those Iberian Peninsula, like, root vegetables, and spices and herbs. They really made, they taught Filipinos in most of the upper Pampanga region how to cook, but obviously since they stayed and they started to migrate south, they had influence all over the islands, and so everyone ended up, cooking or having techniques that had already been, a part of a centuries-old ancient culture in Spain. Even though we also had tribal things that we did. It's kind of funny. We still have a lot of the, my mom used to say, oh, we used to make century eggs, or those salted eggs. And she's like, do you know how I used to make them? And I'm like, how, Mom? She's like, I would put them in a jar with, all of her, I don't know what kind of salt she would use. It would probably be either fish sauce or probably fish sauce. And then we'd bury it in the ground. and I was like, what? That's strange. But that's how they would, cure it. Like and I'm like, that's some really old ancient stuff.
It's the best.
Dig a hole, bury it in the ground, and be like, hey, here's my food. And it's just, it's just so indigenous. And a lot of people right now are trying to go back to those or relearn those indigenous things that we lost after colonization, you know what I mean? And it's really, really, it's really interesting to dive into. And that's one thing that my partner kind of, I always, like, my mom always cooked Filipino. So anytime his family would cook for me, it would be so familiar, obviously, And I would always seek out the Filipino restaurants in Jersey City when I was up north. But, I knew, his mom really has a good hand in cooking. They're originally from this province called Pangasinan, and when Walter was born, the father stopped traveling, or he was still traveling, and they moved to Pampanga, and she's like, I can't travel with the father anymore. So she actually learned to cook from the people in the villages of Pampanga, which is where, the Spanish would come, and they'd probably, dock their galleons, and then all of the royals would come onto land, and then they would, have their feasts in that area. So, they always say in the Philippines, the region of Pampanga, they are the, that's the culinary capital of the Philippines, that region. That's where Walter's mom learned how to cook. Yeah, so, he and I, it's so funny, we go toe to toe when it comes to, like, food, and I'm like, it's so ironic, and I guess it could be the Filipino, like, in us, in me, like, that makes it easy. But I remember we used to go to Blue Ribbon in Brooklyn. Do you know Blue Ribbon in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa.
So we used to go to Blue Ribbon in Brooklyn, and we went there a couple of times when we first met. And we ordered appetizers, and then we ordered the mains, right? So we ordered escargot, and we ordered bone marrow. And I'm like, oh man, this is great, let's order some mains. We didn't really like the mains. We were like, the mains do not touch the tapas, right? If, in the beginning. So the next time we went, I was like, I kind of just want the escargot and the bone marrow for, like, my main. He's like, me too. So we both just were like, hey, we're just gonna do escargot and bone marrow, and that's how we're gonna post up. So he and I have always been eye to eye when it comes to our flavor profile or palate.
Yeah. And
it was funny, and I'm probably giving away a few of our little secrets about his growth. But when he had never worked in the kitchen before, and this is probably the most in depth that I've ever gone in an interview before. So I just want to let you know.
Okay, keep it going.
So
I'm gonna rest this right here.
Yeah, no worries. So when we first started the restaurant, he had already a great base for, like, Filipino food, obviously.
Yeah.
But whenever you would have reviews that would say, oh, something was a little too salty, or this is not this, or that, it kind of messes with someone that has never really worked in a kitchen before. So I was like, listen, very seldom do two people have the exact identical taste in food. Like, someone, you know what I mean? Like, someone might not eat pork, or someone might not eat escargot, or someone might not like, citrus in their food. And very seldom do two people get together and love, like, everything exactly the same. And I'm like, so if I trust my palate, and I trust your palate, I'm like, you got to trust your palate.
Yeah.
And so at that point, he was like, that's a good point. Like, I'm not going to let someone say if my food is a little too salty or a little too vinegary. I'm not going to let them pull me into their worlds, because then it wouldn't be consistent. So his growth has been amazing when it comes to the restaurant.
It was meant to be.
Was meant to be.
Meant to be.
So we made a little nest over here in Grant Park. Right now we're doing this thing in Cabbagetown because there was a water main break. And people don't really realize, like, what goes on whenever there's a crisis like that. Like, restaurants need water. Like, we need to be able to sanitize. Food safety is 1,000% what someone would think about as soon as the water goes down. Like, how are you going to sanitize? How are you going to wash? How are you going to, what are you going to cook with?
Right.
So when that happens, Walter, he made a beeline to Costco or Restaurant Depot, and he grabbed a whole bunch of waters, and we were filling up our our sinks with water, and we were cooking our rice with water out of the jug. And so we lost a lot of products because we weren't able to cycle through at what would be a normal weekend. So so the reason that we decided, well, actually we bought this trailer back in November.
Oh.
And we were meaning to launch it, but we had a few little things we had to work through. It's actually custom. Like the water pump was a little funky, so we had to make sure that we had to go in there and work that out. So it took a little fine tuning, and once we did, we're like, we need to launch this soon, and we were already in step to launch it.
Yeah.
And then Walter was even calling around for putting the air conditioner on top, right before the water main broke. So then now he's like, yeah, we can't do that. Now we lost product, we lost revenue, 50% of our revenue that weekend.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was. So now we're feeling the crunch, So we're like, you know what? This would be a good time to launch the Roadhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're doing right now. We're just kind of chilling, hanging out, doing some street food. Chef is really proud of that rotisserie. Being the grill.
Guy. Yeah.
Being from Jersey,
yeah.
We have a lot of Italians, a lot of Portuguese. There's a lot of density when it comes to culture, density with culture.
Yeah.
And around his family house, so they lived in Union. They had this Portuguese spot, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna do it like that. And I'm like, what do you mean we're gonna do it like that? He's like, trays of food, so someone can just come and be feed their whole family with it, whole and half chickens. He's like, it's perfect. And he's like, no one's doing that down here. And I'm like, okay, so let's get to it. Trays of food that you can feed your families with. You know what I mean? But when it comes to food, he definitely has a good path to the belly. He really knows. He knows what he likes, and so he doesn't compromise when it comes to what he serves at his restaurant,
right,
or what he'll serve to the public.
Right.
He's like, how would I want to eat this food? And that's how he makes his food. He's like, we're not going to do that because I want to serve what I would eat. I want to serve food with drinks. When we first opened, this is funny. I was like, the space doesn't really call for, because you went to our restaurant, the space doesn't really call for a dining room. I mean, it's cute, and it reminds you of a little hole in the wall in New York City, or London, or something like that. But I'm like, Atlanta, I don't know if they're hole in the wall. Okay. So he's like, no, we really need to teach the public, because if we were to eat Hope and we were to go out to eat, you'd want to have a drink. And I'm like, damn right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, touche. He's like, so we need to have a liquor license. And I'm like, but is it really going to pay for itself? So the liquor license, he's like, here's how he sold it to me. The liquor license is like advertising, because those people that do drink will come. And I'm like, touche. So I was like, you are smart in many, many ways, man. He actually went to school for business, and so it made it a really great combination. Yeah. It made it a really great combination. I had done many years in the restaurant industry in Jersey City, mostly. I actually designed a place on the waterfront there at Crystal Point called Tap House. And then I general managed at a melting pot. I also worked at a local bar, bartending. I've run the gamut when it comes to service. So our two skill sets really kind of made sense together. So that's how we decided to open up the restaurant. But yeah, I mean, it's not easy. Having a restaurant is not easy, because managing the expectations of the public is really it's hard. And then also the other hard part about it is knowing making sure that your staff is okay and taking care of them. That is Walter and I will be like, we're not there are no draws taken. Last month there were no draws taken from me or him, meaning we didn't take any money from the business.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we were just like, we gotta, no matter what, like we would suffer before we would let anyone else in our staff suffer. You know what I mean? Like that's 1000%. And that's just restaurant ownership. And there are people that don't really talk about the nitty gritty of it, but that's what it is. Like you will forego your luxuries to make sure your staff is okay.
It's the reality.
And our staff was amazing because when the water main broke, oh God, it was literally the worst time. Like it couldn't break in the middle of the month or after, in the middle of the month would have been great. But at the end of the month, you just paid taxes 10 days before. You just paid your rent, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, and now I'm strapped for this other stuff, including the loss of product, including the loss of revenue. And it hasn't been easy because we actually opened in the pandemic.
Which is perfect.
I mean,
from what I've been hearing, like it's like the best time to open any business.
I mean, well,
no, sorry, not in a restaurant. No,
not in a restaurant.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm thinking. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So the pandemic was, you know what? I guess the pandemic was a bit of a blessing in disguise because it made us do things that we wouldn't have otherwise done.
Yeah.
Like when we were thinking about our business model. We were thinking like, he was like, we don't need to do takeout, we don't need to worry about delivery. Let's just worry about our customers. Let's worry about the dining room.
Yeah.
Let's be open as much as we can, and we'll just, we'll teach the public. And I was like, okay, no worries. But when the pandemic happened, everything switched to takeout. So now a whole business model that he wasn't even worried about in the beginning, because he's like, let's just focus on our dine-in. Now we were forced to, in order to, make our rent and pay our obligations and pay the electric and do all of these things and actually have a staff, we actually were forced to do takeout. And so obviously we applied to DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats. And so it made us do the hardest thing the hardest thing that we thought was I don't want to call it an obstacle because that would the channel to business is what anybody wants, right?
Yeah.
But it was the thing that the pandemic made us do the thing that we didn't want to do first. Shirley and I, the owner of Sweet Sheets, I know you kind of dove in there for a hot minute to get some sweets. She and I are part of a nonprofit called Les Dames d'Escoffier.
Okay.
And it's an organization of women like the most philanthropic women in culinary in Atlanta. We're a part of this organization called Les Dames d'Escoffier, and it is a nonprofit who organizes and raises funds for future women in culinary.
Okay.
So like in culinary arts, a lot of times you always see like the head chef at the kiln, which is always like a man or
it's mainly men.
Yes.
Mostly men actually.
Exactly, it's mostly men. And the thing is that females we always have this intuition about us, right? Like, it's funny, like anytime there's Walter's always like, where is this, Hope? And I'm like, oh, it's up on the left shelf on the, on the top one to the second behind that. And, like a woman will always know where things are. Multitasking and the intuition is just ridiculous.
Yep.
So you would imagine that, women would already be seated in the culinary world at the top of the food chain, but they're just not. And because and why not?
That's so, because I always thought, I guess this is like the traditional side of me. I usually associate cooking with like women.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right, that's the thing, is like
it's my Jamaican background, that's kind of how it is.
The women are in the kitchen. Yeah.
The men are too, but like growing up in my household, my mom mostly cooked.
Yeah.
So.
And that's how it is in most traditional Filipino households too.
Yeah.
But that was all that kind of came around because of colonization, I think. Because if you go back into Filipinos' indigenous history, women were shaman. They were a part of this thing called like the babayin, and they would actually go out and they would hunt, and they were leaders, they were chieftains. And so in the Philippines, they were naturally the ones that looked over the family. And I don't know if it's because they knew that the woman was a little more intuitive, so they just let her do the thing. But the Filipinos in our indigenous history, they were it. they were, and it's interesting because as soon as the Spaniards came, you know, it was like, okay, well, this is how, you know, society kind of really works. Like I guess a civilized society really works. The women are here, staying in the house, cooking, cleaning, all that stuff, and the men go out and hunt and gather. So at some point, I guess they were like, yeah, we're going to subscribe to the people that wear the bustiers and the bustles and the corsets and the collars and the ones that have all of the fabric and all of these riches. You know, of course, an indigenous person is going to say, oh my gosh, look at this person who's well dressed, who has things that are sewn, custom made.
Right.
You know, who have, you know, or who are coming here with all these things. They're, of course, they're going to say, well, obviously they must know things because everything is so custom on them.
Yeah, the way they present.
So they're going to follow them, right? So, you know, and it's just probably a human curiosity, right?
Right.
It's probably human curiosity, like,
True.
yeah, this must mean, you know,
That this person knows something. They
and I don't even know if
what
they
to do.
even cared about what success was back then because they're
Right.
indigenous, right? They
Yeah.
just hunted, gathered, worshiped the moon, worshiped the river, worshiped the mountain, you know, but then we were colonized. And, you know, it's not to say that listen, we're in a world of humans now, right? We need to evolve, right?
Yep.
So, and evolution comes with, you know, I guess the exchanging of information, and that's pretty
does.
much what they were doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and I can say now, you know, I don't know if you know this, and you know, a lot of people don't know this, but so the Filipinos fought against Spain and won. Well, Spain retreated. I believe it was 1898 is when the Spanish were like, okay, we're going to retreat. And America kind of came in and said, hey, listen, stop messing with these people, right? They're, you know, this is their lands. And so Spanish retreated. And then, so on June 12th, so that wasn't too long ago, it was like 3 days ago. June 12th, 1898 was what we decided was our Independence Day, because that was the day that we won the war. They retreated, we won.
Yeah.
But then after that, Spain turned around and sold us as their colony to America. So from 1898 to 1946, until Harry S. Truman said, now you're independent. Because I think they wanted to colonize us. I mean, there was American imperialism in there too, but 1946, July 4th, 1946, is when Harry S. Truman said, nope, the Philippines is an independent country. So we had already said we're a free people. We fought for that. But then America was like, okay, yes, they have. We also agree that they're independent, and they did that in 1946 on July 4th. So now we have two Independence Days. But yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting history to learn, and I've learned a lot since I have dove into to owning a Filipino restaurant. It really is, you know, it's amazing because when I moved to New Jersey, you know,
What part of Jersey?
Hoboken.
Hoboken, right? You told me.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Hoboken. So when I moved to New Jersey, you know, I left at a young age. I was like 19, you know, and then I lived there for 20 years. And you know, when I left my mom, obviously I knew the culture. Like when I was growing up, I mean, we were not rich or anything like that.
Right.
She would throw some rice and some bagoong. Bagoong is a shrimp paste that we have.
Okay.
It's another form of salt in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So she'd do rice bagoong and calamansi on top, and she'd be like, here's your food. You know, it wasn't anything extravagant. You know, she would cook toyo, which is, you know, what's funny is my family in California. One time I visited them and they had like this huge pile of toyo. I'm like, I don't know if this is like sarcasm because I'm not going to eat all of this. But toyo is a dried fish. It's a dried herring.
Yeah.
And again, you know, Filipinos would they didn't have obviously modern day refrigeration, so they would cure a lot of their stuff with either sugar or salt, or apparently buried in the ground.
Right. Like the Koreans do with kimchi.
Yeah, so they would ferment
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and they would cure it with salt and dry it and hang it. So the toyo is one of those dried herrings, but it is so good with tomatoes and onions and a little bit of bagoong. Oh my gosh, chef's kiss in my opinion. So yeah, so my mom, when I left her at the age of 19 and headed out for the horizon, You know, I knew obviously about Filipino food. She would make adobo and stuff like that, lumpia all the time. We always had lumpia in our house. So it was a natural progression into the Filipino food culture. But now that I've been with Walter, you know, Walter being 100% Filipino.
You can tell.
Yes, he.
They call him Pinoy.
Yes, Pinoy, and then the girls are Pinay.
Panay?
Or Panay, yeah, Panay.
Okay, cool.
Pinay, but
Okay.
Panay,
Cool.
yeah. And then they call the halfers, because we actually have a word for the halfers.
You a half?
I'm half. Yes, so
Half
they
what?
call half Filipino, half. My father's Canadian,
Oh.
still a Canadian citizen, but I might as well be. I mean, I guess English Canadian. You know.
You kind of have an ambiguous type of look.
I know, I do, right?
Yeah.
It's like, where is she from? It's so strange.
It's okay.
One of those things.
That's the mystery.
That is the mystery. It makes it more interesting.
Exactly.
So, you know, diving back into my mom's culture was a blessing. And, you know, I tried to do everything I can because, you know, she's getting older. And, you know, what's funny is she'll speak to me in Tagalog and I'm like, I know every other word. And I'm like, I'm trying really hard, Mom. And she starts laughing. Oh, you can't remember. I keep talking to you in Tagalog. But it's just when she gets older, she's like thinking in Tagalog. So she's now starting to talk more in Tagalog. Yeah. So I'm like, I better learn Tagalog, you know? Yes. So Shirley, can you take it? Yeah. Shirley's gonna go and take the order. I love her.
Okay.
So, so speaking Tagalog.
Mm-hmm.
So then, Tagalog. You know, some people are like, oh, you know, do you speak Filipino? And it's not. There's no. It's Tagalog.
Yeah, I know.
But they have other languages. Like what's interesting is that, you know, there are over 7,000 islands and like I think over, you know, 3,000 dialects. Something crazy. But
isn't their main language English?
So, great question. They do learn it. So remember I was back to the history class.
Yeah.
So when America had occupied us after we were sold to them from Spain. America came in and America did great things for us. I mean, they taught us about industry, right? They taught us about industry. How are you going to get your products from your provinces to wherever you need, to the seaports, to be able to create, you know, to export and create trade. You know, they taught us how to trade, right? So they actually built this train called the Iron Horse. That's America, the Iron Horse. I'm like, I love that we had the Iron Horse in the Philippines. It sounds so like,
strong and
it sounds strong, right? Like it's gonna do stuff for us, and it's true. It did do stuff for us.
Right.
Basically, what the Iron Horse did was it kind of connected the provinces and their resources to Manila, and you know, further to, you know, off to the ports where they were then able to distribute a lot of the food or the rice. You know, they have rice granaries all over the Philippines.
Right.
And actually, the province where my mom is from, it's called Nueva Ecija. It is the rice granary of the Philippines. So
that's where all the rice comes from.
that is where all the rice comes from. However, it's not a love story per se. It's not a love story because the government required Nueva Ecija to supply the Philippines. So the Filipinos, you know, it's a third world country. How much are they going to pay for their rice?
Right.
But the region of Pampanga, right? The region of Pampanga, they also had rice granaries. They were able to export to China, to Japan, to Malaysia, probably Singapore, because you know that whole Philippine Sea thing.
Yeah.
I don't know where your bank bag is.
There isn't one.
Is it your pocket?
It could be.
Or is it his pocket?
It could be anyone's pocket.
Okay. Well, it ain't gotta be. It could easily
It should.
be mine.
I know. It should be your pocket, actually.
I'm filming all of that. That's in real time.
So that's fine. She's great. So the rice.